Saudi officials have presented a ground conflict as a potentially catastrophic blow to Middle East security in talks with their American colleagues. Welcome, everyone! In today's video, we're going to tell you about Saudi Arabia warning the US to stop Israel now, or they will take action. In recent days, Saudi leaders have issued a strong warning to the US that an Israeli ground invasion of Gaza might have disastrous consequences for the Middle East. 10 senators met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the de facto ruler of the kingdom, last weekend in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut and a member of the Armed Services Committee, was one of the senators who attended. Mr. Blumenthal told the New York Times on Thursday that the Saudi leadership was hopeful that a ground operation could be averted for reasons of stability as well as the loss of life. He said that it would be very destructive, as warned by Saudi officials. According to one Saudi official and a second person with knowledge of the discussions, senior Saudi officials have expressed even stronger warnings to their American counterparts in several conversations, voicing their worries that a ground invasion could end up being catastrophic for the entire region. The conversation took place as tensions spread beyond the Gaza Strip, as Israel bombards and besieges the enclave in retaliation for Hamas, the militant Palestinian organization that controls Gaza, attacking Israel on October 7. Necessities like fuel and water are becoming scarcer. It was clear from one Biden administration official that the Saudis oppose an Israeli attack on Gaza due to the sensitivity of the situation. The U.S. official, the Saudi official, and the individual who was aware of the Saudi threats all requested anonymity. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman strolls beside President Joko Widodo of Indonesia on a lavender carpet in a square. President Joko Widodo of Indonesia was received by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman this month in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, as shown in a picture provided by the Saudi royal court. Since the Hamas rocket attacks that resulted in the deaths of over 1,400 Israelis, the United States has consistently affirmed Israel's right to self-defense. Recently, President Biden stated, "Let there be no doubt, the United States stands with Israel." Meanwhile, according to U.S. officials, Mr. Biden pushed Israel to postpone the attack for several reasons, such as allowing more time for hostage negotiations, increasing the amount of humanitarian aid that reaches Gaza, and improving war strategy. Additionally, there are indications that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is apprehensive about an invasion. Prince Mohammed and Mr. Biden agreed on pursuing broader diplomatic efforts to maintain stability across the region and prevent the conflict from expanding during a call this week, according to a statement released by the White House on Tuesday. The statement omitted any mention of talks about a ground invasion. Earlier this year, Prince Mohammed and President Biden reconciled after a period of intensely tense relations over the exploration of a possible agreement in which Saudi Arabia would recognize Israel and establish diplomatic connections. Prominent advisors to President Biden expressed great enthusiasm for a deal, claiming it would transform the Middle East. However, they also acknowledged the numerous challenges in diplomacy. For an extended period, some Arab administrations, such as Saudi Arabia, have declined to establish diplomatic ties with Israel prior to the establishment of a Palestinian state. However, in the last 10 years, this calculation has changed as the autocratic leaders in the region have taken into account the potential security and economic advantages of a relationship with Israel, as well as the potential benefits they could receive from the United States in exchange. Under an accord known as the Abraham Accords, which was mediated by the Trump administration, Bahrain, Morocco, and the United Arab Emirates forged diplomatic relations with Israel in 2020. The Palestinian struggle is still a powerful rallying cry in the region, and the unpopularity of those treaties only increased with time as the Israeli government shifted further to the right and increased the number of settlements in the West Bank. The Biden administration's talks with the political heavyweight of the Arab world, Saudi Arabia, were more extensive and nuanced from the outset than the conversations over those previous agreements under the Trump administration. Saudi officials stated that they would only accept normalization with Israel if the United States provided benefits such as increased U.S. arms sales, a mutual defense pact between the two countries, and American support for a Saudi civilian nuclear program. Talks regarding Israel's potential need to make concessions to the Palestinians were also held by American and Saudi officials. Nevertheless, Prince Mohammed appeared to imply that they would not succeed in achieving Palestinian statehood in an interview with Fox News last month. The identities of 6,747 persons who have died since the start of the conflict were made public by Gaza's health ministry on Thursday. It also stated that 281 more bodies were still unidentified. Enraged demonstrators have decried Israel and the U.S. and shown support for the Palestinian people by taking to the streets around the Middle East while condemning Israel's blockade and demanding a ceasefire. Saudi officials made an effort to maintain the national narrative of the country centered on the prince's ambitions to make Saudi Arabia a major international financial center. However, Saudi officials have delivered a far more direct message in private meetings and phone calls with U.S. officials, according to Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who assisted in organizing the visit, and Mr. Blumenthal. The prince and other Saudi officials gave a menacing impression to the Senate group regarding the attack on Israel by Hamas. Mr. Graham stated that the prince understands that this was an act of terror. However, he wants a measured reaction that won't lead to a more protracted and intense dispute. Experts on Hamas have cautioned that any attempt to destroy the organization, as Israel has promised to do, could foster more radicalism and violence and increase Palestinian sense of oppression under Israeli rule. An invasion might also exacerbate instability in nearby nations, especially in Egypt and Jordan, whose governments are already finding it difficult to quell unrest due to economic hardship or political repression. Iran has historically supported Hamas, and depending on Israel's military reaction, Iran-backed anti-Israel regional militias have vowed to open up new fronts in the conflict. Saudi Arabia could be the intended target. Since the start of the conflict, Saudi authorities have reiterated their support for the establishment of a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital and for a meaningful peace process between Israel and the Palestinians. The Saudi foreign minister, Prince Faisal bin Farhan, told reporters this week that we can never have real peace and stability in the area if we are not willing to face all of the obstacles, all of the hurdles, all of the history that is involved in this issue. It seems that American and Saudi leaders are clinging to the possibility of a deal for normalization with Israel in spite of the increasing bloodshed. The meager connections between the two nations, which are divided by a 22-mile drive across Jordan, would have remained mostly secretive without that official move. Senators claim to have returned from Riyadh with the sense that Saudi authorities would still prefer to recognize Israel at the appropriate time. Normalization is often presented by Israeli and American officials as a means of aiding in Iran containment, the most notable adversary of Saudi Arabia in the region. As Iran, in an attempt to drive out the Houthi rebels who are still firmly in control in Yemen despite receiving support from Iran, Prince Mohammed launched a disastrous Saudi-led military operation in that country in 2015. However, in an effort to diversify the economy of the oil-dependent monarchy, the Crown Prince has recently adopted a more conciliatory stance and focused on creating bridges. He restored diplomatic ties with Iran earlier this year. But, according to Mr. Blumenthal, an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel didn't appear feasible until after Israel concludes its operation. Prince Mohammed and Mr. Biden affirmed the importance of working toward a permanent peace between Israel and Palestinians as soon as the situation calms during the Tuesday call, according to a statement from the White House. According to a statement released by the Saudi government, Prince Mohammed emphasized the critical necessity of stopping military operations and starting a peace process in order to guarantee that the Palestinians get their legitimate rights. A Palestinian state was not mentioned in either statement, according to the individual with knowledge of the conversations. A possible agreement that Saudi officials were working on prior to the war contained a way for the Palestinians to establish a state. Prince Mohammed may be able to control public reaction in his own nation, where there is strong anti-Israel sentiment and widespread support for the Palestinian cause, by framing the possibility of forging closer connections with Israel as a means of securing more rights for the Palestinians. Although U.S. diplomatic efforts are currently focused on the immediate crisis, we remain committed to the long-term goal of a more stable, prosperous, and integrated Middle East region, including through normalization and advancement of a two-state solution, the State Department said in response to inquiries concerning the Saudi warnings. That's all for today's video. However, Prior to the Hamas strikes, American officials and experts briefed on the conversations in Washington claimed that the main topic of the U.S.-Saudi negotiations had been the United States' security needs for Saudi Arabia. According to those authorities and commentators, the Palestinian question had not been thoroughly discussed. Don't forget to like the video and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos from our channel. Thanks for watching and see you all soon.